Hello, my name's Aviva, and today I'm going to be sharing with you all of my thoughts on all of the books that I have read in the past week. So my first ever weekly reading wrap up, and it's not really anything special or anything new, but technically I have only been giving you guys mid-month wrap ups and then end of the month wrap ups like since I started my channel. And lately I've been feeling a little bit overwhelmed by making those videos for you because I always have so many books to share with you, and then the videos end up becoming so long, and I haven't really been happy with them lately. So I kind of decided to switch things up a little bit and try out giving you guys a weekly reading wrap up. So every Friday I plan to post a video of everything that I've read in the past week. So the day that I'm filming this video is Thursday, and every Thursday I'm going to plan to update you on everything that I've read since the last Thursday, and then I'll post it on Friday, and then we'll do it every single week. So that is my plan for the near future. But if it doesn't work out, if you guys aren't liking it, I'll switch things up again and see what ends up working out. But basically, I've been wanting to update you a little bit more often on what I've been reading, and that is what I'm trying to do. So either way, with that said, I have 6 books to share with you that I have read in the past week. So let's get started. Either way, first up, I read The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. So this book has been on my TBR probably for about 2 years now. I kind of picked it up right when it was very, very popular. Like everybody was talking about this book, saying like, oh my God, it was so different and so unique and so amazing and whimsical and everything along those lines. And I just picked it up and then never thought about it again until last week. And basically I finally read it and I actually really did enjoy it. And I now understand why everybody was so obsessed with it in the moment. But either way, if you're not familiar with this book, it's basically about this guy who works for like social services, and he goes to different orphanages and kind of just like sees what's up with the kids and everything like that. And one day he ends up getting this assignment to go to the House in the Cerulean Sea, which is an orphanage for very bad children. I forgot how they say it in the book, but either way, like all of these kids are like menaces to society. They're like a danger to society or whatever it is. So they're all hidden away in this orphanage, and he's basically supposed to go there, and his the people that he works for basically wants like to get them in trouble. But obviously when he gets there, he's going to end up falling in love with all of the kids. You're gonna get to meet all of them and everything like that. And then at the same time, you're also gonna end up having a male romance between this social worker and then the head of the orphanage. So it's a very cute book, very like Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children kind of vibes. It has a little bit of like a middle grade feeling, but I'm almost positive it wasn't actually middle grade. It kind of just like felt that way because of like the whimsicalness. But either way, it was a lot of fun, like not much bad about it. It was very entertaining, very unique. I really liked all of the different kids. It was very fun to see like the main guy in this book kind of change from being like a very anal social worker kind of to like falling in love with all these kids and deciding that like he wants to like, stand up for them and everything like that. So overall, great book, really not much to complain about. I totally see why it is very popular and very loved. But either way, after this, I did also read the other book by TJ Klune, which was the Under the Whispering Door, something like that. I don't know. I read it via audio, so I don't own it physically. But either way, I unfortunately did not like this book, and especially because I kind of like read them back to back. The first one was so much better than the second one, and therefore I was like even more not interested in Under the Whispering Door. But it's basically more or less like a Christmas Carol retelling of sorts. You're following this guy who's pretty much a really big dick, and basically he's going to end up dying, and then he's going to go to this Under the Whispering Door place where it's like people, I don't know, they pass to the next place or whatever, and he's going to end up falling in love with the guy who runs this tea shop in this Under the Whispering Door house. And at the same time, he's basically going to realize that he kind of lived his life being a real big dick, and you're going to see that like development in him of sorts. And there's like a bunch of other stuff going on, but honestly, I found the book to be really, really boring, and it was kind of like a very uninteresting version of A Christmas Carol. Like A Christmas Carol, like that's very much like, the Ebenezer Scrooge or like whatever, the three past, present, whatever, they come and then they show him his past, present, future, and how we get to change things. And it kind of had that idea to it, except it wasn't even as interesting as that. It was kind of like a more boring version. I don't know, did I say that already? But either way, for a lot of reasons, I kind of just like really didn't enjoy the book, and I honestly I would have DNF'd it, but because I was listening to it via audio, I was kind of like too lazy to go and find a new audio to listen to at the moment. So I kind of just like finished it up because I was too lazy to choose something new. That makes sense, right? So anyway, I did read it, but unfortunately did not love it. But anyway, after that, throughout the week, I also did listen to A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Bridget Kemmer. So this is the first book in, I believe, the Curse Breaker trilogy. And either way, I did not love this very much. This is a very basic, classic classic, whatever you want to call it, YA Beauty and the Beast retelling. You're following this girl who like lives in DC, and one day she sees this girl getting attacked, and she ends up trying to like save the girl, ends up getting taken by the guy who was attacking the other girl. She goes to this magical place, and it ends up being like a regular general, whatever you want to call it, Beauty and the Beast retelling. So it honestly had a lot of very interesting elements to it. Like the main girl in this book had like cerebral palsy. I'm sorry that I'm saying it wrong. Like for some reason it's not coming out of my mouth correctly. But either way, there were very interesting elements to this book. But at the end of the day, like it just didn't hit home for me. And like I wasn't really impressed, and I felt very like meh by the end of it. I'm like, okay, yeah, classic Beauty and the Beast retelling, but honestly, I've read a lot better. And I feel like I would just rather read the other ones that I've read that are more interesting than this one. And happens to be, I don't think I'm going to be continuing on with the trilogy. Mostly because even though I did find the ending, like, you know, that last little epilogue chapter to be quite interesting and very revealing for one of the characters that I was really enjoying in the book, I did end up going to like, you know, the second and third book on GOODREADS, and I saw that it had like very, very bad reviews. And then I went and like, you know, looked at some reviews, and I kind of saw the vibe of like what was going on in the book, and I didn't really like what I was seeing. And I have heard overall that like the series does generally go downhill. Like it is like the general population does feel like this series does end up going like that way. So I feel like, you know, because I wasn't in love with book one, I'm just not going to bother with book two and book three because I don't think it's going to get any better. So yeah, I read this book and I'm very happy to like officially take it off of my physical TBR because it has been here for a while, but I didn't end up loving it. So that is that. But anyway, after that, I did also end up reading 3 physical books this week. So first up, I did read The Silent Patient by Brittany C. Cherry. So this is the 3rd book in the Element series. And okay, let me just explain to you what this book is about. You're following these 2 people who, when they were children, they kind of, you know, they were very good friends, and like she was kind of like, you know, they were crushing on each other. They were about to get like fake married sort of thing, you know, like very classic children sort of thing. I think they were like 10 years old or something like that. And either way, one day they're in the woods getting ready for their marriage of sorts. And basically the girl ends up wandering off and seeing something that she shouldn't have seen, and then getting very traumatized from the events that, you know, happened in that moment. And ever since then, she basically was like, you know, so traumatized that she never spoke again. And then throughout the rest of the book, you basically get to jump from like, you know, her being 6 years old to 10 years old. And then I think it was like 18 years old and then 28 years old. And basically in that entire time, she's never left her house, never spoken again, anything along those lines. But the boy that she was about to marry that night ends up becoming very protective of her, ends up becoming her best friend. And it's obviously going to end up being their romance. And I really, really liked the idea of this romance because this guy was just the sweetest guy in the entire world. I loved how like he was just like hopelessly in love with her. Like at the end of the day, it's like he kind of felt bad for what happened to her because like, you know, he blamed himself and everything along those lines, and he just wanted to be there for her. And he ended up just like, you know, being absolutely obsessed with her. Like he didn't really care that like, you know, she never spoke. He ended up like finding ways to communicate with her as well. And like he wasn't really weirded out by her or anything like that, even though like everybody else in her life was more or less like, you know, very uncomfortable with her situation and didn't know how to handle her and everything like that. And I just really liked everything about this guy. And this girl, like it was a very interesting storyline. Like, you know, she never talked, but she could talk. And like obviously things in that, like on that side of things, like, you know, the way that she would never leave her house and never talk again, that obviously developed throughout the book. And I did enjoy the majority of the story. Like I'm pretty sure for the first like 80% or so, I was actually like very, very invested in it. I was considering giving it like a 4 or 5 stars because there were moments that I was like, I don't know if like I like this unique storyline. And then there were other moments where I'm like, this guy is just like, you know, the best book boyfriend in the world. So I'm going to give it 5 stars. But then I got to the last little bit of it, and then it just completely went downhill. First of all, it was very rushed, the ending. And then also there was this new element that was brought in that had to do with the guy. And I thought that it was very much not needed. It kind of like paralleled something that she was dealing with, and I was just like, why does he have to be damaged to then like make her go and fix herself and like get out of her comfort zone and things like that? Like I just didn't think that like that was needed. I would have rather see the slow progression of as she got older, this guy was there for her, and then one day for some odd reason he finally convinced her to like, you know, fix the things that she needed to fix in her life. Like why did he have to go and like get that thing to happen to him for all of that to go down? And I just really didn't like that aspect of it. And on top of that, I didn't really find it very believable the way that like certain things ended up playing out, especially like on the Department of Her. I don't want to give any spoilers away, but basically I thought that the ending was very rushed, very unbelievable, and then all around the board I just like wasn't really impressed by it. So the book did end up like going like quite downhill for me, even though I did like the ending. Like I was very happy, like, you know, ending, like, you know, nothing bad about it, except I just didn't like how it all ended up playing out so quickly. So basically I ended up giving this book like a 3.75 maybe, because I did enjoy the majority of it, but the ending honestly really did kind of ruin it for me. So yeah, that was that. Would I recommend this book? If you're very interested into this specific story, I'd say yeah, go for it, but like don't have too high expectations for the ending, even though I'm sure that like a lot of people would overlook it. But for me, I was just like, why? Like, why? But whatever. Anyway, that was that. So after that, I did read this book called Make You Mine by Laura Pavlov. So I absolutely hated this book. And before I tell you why, I will tell you what it's actually about. So you are following this guy who is a divorced single dad and is also a firefighter. And he's going to end up having a romance with his new nanny or babysitter, whatever you want to call it, who is basically the daughter of one of his very good friends that is, I think, the head of the fire, chief, police, whatever you want to call it, like the place that he works. I'm pretty sure it's his boss / his very good friend's daughter, who's going to end up, you know, being his nanny, move into like, you know, his guest house of sorts, take care of his kids. And also I'm pretty sure she's like either 9 or 10 years younger than him. So basically a lot of stuff going on. And I really liked the idea of this story. But what I didn't like about it was that basically everything that I was expecting from the story happened in the first half of it. Like literally we got the beginning, middle, and end of the romance more or less in the first 125 pages or so. This book is literally only like 300 pages. So the entire romance aspect of it was extremely fast paced. Like literally we jumped right into the story and then everything started happening so quickly. Like within the first 75 pages, we got one of those moments where it was like, you know, she walked into him naked and then all of a sudden their attraction started boosting. And then we got like a take care of her sick moment. And then we got a sexual assault moment where like something was like someone was attacking her of sorts. And basically he ends up coming in and like protecting her. And it was like, all those are really good scenes. And there was even like a couple more like very classic, very good scenes that people like to latch onto, except it happened like way too quickly for me. I'm like, calm down for a second, like slow and steady wins the pace, you know? But either way, yeah, I wasn't really liking how it was like progressing so quickly. And then happens to be like, once we got to the halfway point, I'm like, well, I got everything that I was expecting out of this book. So what could possibly happen in the second half of the book? And then in the second half of the book, it basically had to do with the idea of like, you know, the fact that he was divorced and like his ex started coming back. And then there was all of these, you know, fights and problems with like custody over the kids and lawyers and, you know, courts and things along those lines. And I personally do not like reading about that because I'm a child of divorce and I went through that as a kid and I really have no interest in bringing that element of my life into books and reading about like, you know, fights and everything like that. So between parents and whatever. So I really did not enjoy the second half of the book and I didn't even love the first half of the book. So I did end up giving it a 2 stars because like, honestly, like when I was at the 125 page mark and like, you know, I already got everything that I wanted from the book, I was like, I should just DNF it now because like this book can only go downhill from here because what more can possibly happen in the romance department? And I was very right about that, but somehow I made it to the end and it did not get any better. So yeah, that is more or less how I felt about this book. And then anyway, the last book that I'm going to be sharing with you today for my weekly wrap up is The American Roommate Experiment by Elena Armez. And yes, this book is going to be extremely popular. It just came out, I'm pretty sure on like Tuesday or something like that. And yes, I'm going to bash it because I love saying bad things about books that everybody's going to end up loving. But basically, if you're not familiar with this book, this is the second book in the Spanish Love Deception companion series, and you are following Lena's best friend. So Lena was the main girl in the Spanish Love Deception. She had a best friend named Rosie, and this is going to be her romance with Lena's cousin. So basically, at the beginning of this story, Rosie's apartment ends up like, you know, something happened to her, like the ceiling caves in, and Lena happens to be on her honeymoon at the moment, and she has an extra key to her best friend's apartment, so she decides to pack up and go there because it's a free space to stay at. And when she gets there, someone ends up trying to like, you know, break in of sorts, and she gets really scared. The whole misunderstanding sorts of things. But anyway, on the other side of the door was Lena's cousin, who is currently traveling the US, and Lena had promised that he can stay in the apartment while he is touring New York City. So happens to be very oddly, Rosie has always had an online crush on this cousin of hers because like Lena one time mentioned him, showed her like a picture, and then ever since then she's kind of like been obsessed with him and stalked him online. So now that he's there in person, she's all of a sudden like, oh my God, this is like my online crush of sorts. And she went all like, weird around him and everything like that. But basically, more or less, things happen, and they're going to end up deciding to share the apartment while they both need it. So they're going to be temporary roommates. And then happens to be Rosie is also a romance author, and she's having a lot of trouble writing her second novel. So he basically decides to experimental date her, which is basically just fake dating said in a different sort of term. But basically they're going to go on a bunch of fake dates to try and give her some new inspiration and stuff like that. So that is more or less the gist of the story and what happens throughout the story. And the thing about this book is that I did not find it to be unique whatsoever. It kind of reminded me a lot of Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating mixed with Beach Read. Like, if you take those books and take a lot of the basic elements from those two books, you kind of like mix it together and got this one. And I just wasn't really impressed by this book. Like, yeah, maybe I went into it with a little bit of high expectations, but like all around the board, I just found it lacking and, very underwhelming, like every which way. So first of all, I didn't really latch onto the characters right away. So that is always like, it's going to make it harder to read a book if you're all of a sudden not like obsessed with them from right off the bat. And then on top of that, we also had instant attraction, because obviously she was attracted to him even before she met him, and she was crushing on him even before she knew him. And then right when he met her, all of a sudden, like his eyes, opened wide, and all of a sudden he was like, oh my God, such a pretty girl right in front of me, like that whole type of vibe. And then he was very flirty with her, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but like it didn't necessarily like sell me on the romance. And I mean, what else did I not like about this book? Like, I didn't like a lot of stuff about it. I also felt, and this might sound like very weird to say, but I felt as if this person, like the person who made it, like who wrote this book, kind of took a bunch of tropes that she thought would really sell a book and then mush it into a story and then just try to make them work. Like, oh, she took fake dating, she took a damaged character, she took roommates, forced proximity, a masquerade ball, and things along those lines, like very grab worthy things for book talkers and bookstagrammers to really rave about and things like that. And then she kind of mushed it all together, but then I feel like a lot of this stuff didn't end up pulling through. Like, specifically, I was very upset with the whole idea of the main guy in this book being a damaged character, because he was basically like a professional, surfer or something like that. And what happened to him? Like, basically, like he was injured or something like that. And he was dealing with a lot of things with his career and things along those lines. And I feel like there was so much potential for this author to take that damaged character and really dive deep into what he was going through and how that was affecting his life and things like that. And I feel like it just never ended up getting there. I feel like there were a lot of really solid things that you could have taken from this book, and they never ended up actually hitting home. There was a one bedroom because they were staying in a studio apartment, except it was so underwhelming because it was always okay, he's just going to stay on the couch and she's going to take the bed and easy enough, we're done. And it was so underwhelming. And then there was also the whole thing was that she was making a she was making a book the entire time throughout the book. Throughout the entire story, she was writing a book, and at the end of it, it was okay, we're up to step number 4, which is when the guy's going to mess up, and then he's going to have to grovel. And then at the end of the book, obviously he did something wrong, and then he's going to have to grovel, except he didn't actually end up groveling. And I'm why would you specifically point that out in a book and then give us literally one moment of him saying how sorry he is and then she taking it back? Groveling is supposed to be when he has to work for it, and he did not really have to work for it. And it made me so upset, not because there was just no groveling, but because you specifically pointed out that groveling is an important part to a romance book, and then we didn't end up getting an amazing groveling moment. So I was very underwhelmed by that as well. And I mean, I feel like I had a laundry list of things that really just were not working for me from this book, but basically that is just me being ultra picky. I kind of went into this book, yes, with high expectations because it was so hyped up. Everybody is going to say good things about it. I know that everybody's just going to give this an easy 5 stars. Yeah, there's going to be a few people who are going to feel the same way as I did about it, but at the end of the day, this is going to be the book that's going to be on your feed for the next 6 months. So I did go into it very critically, and then I wasn't impressed by it. It's I went into it with a critical eye, and then all of a sudden I'm oh yeah, I could complain about that, and yep, I'm going to complain about that. Oh, and also it was a slow burn romance, but I feel instant attraction and then slow burn romances do not mix very well. It was just a very big tease for no reason whatsoever. If you give me instant attraction, but then no reason for it to actually be a slow burn, it's a slow burn because you're roommating together and you decided to be friends and you decided to fake date and not make these real dates, that is just stupid in my opinion. And it's either give us a slow burn angsty romance where for some reason they feel they can't be together, or give me not a slow burn romance, And there was there was reasons okay, he didn't really want to date anybody because of the things that he was going through, but then again, it wasn't really flushed out the whole idea of him being a damaged character. So basically, I feel like I could sit here for like a very long time and just keep on bashing this book, but more or less, I was not very impressed by this book. I found it to be very basic, very not unique, and reminded me of a lot of other books that I have read in the past, and therefore I just did not love this book. And I'm sorry for blabbering on and not saying all of those thoughts in a very cohesive manner, but I did just finish this book last night, so everything is still like processing in my head. But either way, with that said, that is more or less how I felt about the American Roommate Experiment. So yeah, I'm gonna be the one of the very few people who are going to say bad things about this book, but I said it, I don't really mind saying the negative thoughts, and I'm not gonna be surprised when a lot of people tell me like, oh my God, I love that book, I can't believe it didn't work for you, you know, but it didn't, and that is that. So anyway, with that said, that is going to be the end of my weekly wrap up. Somehow this video ended up being 20 minutes long, even though I was trying to make these videos very short instead of very long like my mid-month wrap ups, but I guess I had a lot to say, so I'll just leave you here and stop rambling on. So if you did enjoy watching this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you are not currently subscribed, and also leave me a comment down below if you read any of these books that I mentioned in today's video, how you felt about them, if you had same opinions as me, different opinions as me. I'd love to come across somebody who is going to end up feeling the same way as I did about the American Roommate Experience. So if you did read this book and you didn't like it either, please share that with me, because I would be very happy to know that I'm not the only one. But anyway, with that said, I'm going to let you go. So thank you again so much for taking the time to watch my video, and until next time, enjoy reading.